Hello, MSOE fans, and welcome to the Raider Report, where we sit down with MSOE coaches to discuss all things Raider athletics, from game reactions to recruiting news and everything in between. The Raider Report has all the behind-the-scenes details and news you want. Our guest this week is the head coach of men's lacrosse, Sean Farrell. And at this time, I am joined by the head coach of men's lacrosse, Sean Farrell. Sean, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Let's rock and roll. Let's get right into it. It's pretty customary. It's our first question, as is tradition. I've got to ask how you ended up at MSOE because you've traveled quite a distance. You're originally a New York guy?
Correct. Long Island.
So how'd you end up here?
Through the military, actually.
Okay.
My wife is from Kenosha,
Okay.
and so when I was training in the military at Great Lakes, I would come out to Kenosha and hang out on the weekends there.
Sure.
I don't want to go into further details than that, but we met at a bar, no less, and I then after the military ended up marrying her and started out my career getting back into lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
So. That's kind of how I ended up in the Midwest area,
For sure.
and then from there my career started to develop.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You got back into lacrosse. You were at Carthage before here. Correct. You were under David Neff over at Carthage. He's been there a very long time. They've seen a lot of success. Talk to me about that experience. And obviously you not fell back in love with the game, but you fell in love with coaching. Talk to me about how you realized this is what I want to do with my career.
Yeah, I think it was more so the fact that, to your point, fell back in love with it. Being out of the sport for 5 years when I was in the military, I saw how much I loved the fact of being around the sport. I had a rich family background in it, with all my brothers playing college, my dad playing college, my cousins. We all played at high levels because obviously we grew up at the hotbed in Long Island. So it's funny. I ended up kind of driving around looking to pick up a club team or something like that. And Carthage had just started their team.
Okay.
So I walked in there and then I spoke to Neff and they had just started. Like he had his recruiting season the previous year, so they were in their first inaugural season. So he was looking for other coaches. And I'm like, hey, I have a very rich background in the sport, not as much in coaching. I did a little coaching before the military, but I said, hey, I'm here to help. And, obviously he heard my background. So, got right into it. And, we had a great relationship. We still talk, pretty much all the time throughout, these 20 years that we've known each other. So it's been a great starting point for me because to see a team grow kind of gave me the ability to work with kids, that weren't at a high IQ level to really kind of develop my way of communicating and kind of find my niche. But when I first got into it, I realized this is where I need to be. It had a lot of background to my growth in sports because I played multiple sports in high school: football, basketball, lacrosse, and so getting into that mindset of a team and being around that group of people is just part of who I've been my entire life.
Not to dwell on the past too much, but I'm going to keep prodding at your background here a little bit. You talked about growing up in the hotbed of lacrosse in Long Island there. You said your whole family played. Lacrosse is kind of still growing in the middle of the country. It's not as popular as it is out on the coast. So just kind of describe that landscape on the East Coast of what lacrosse is. Because obviously, in high schools over here, it's like you have football, basketball, baseball. Those are kind of the big three. Where does lacrosse kind of fall in that pecking order out there?
I would say it's at the top between football and basketball and lacrosse in that range because a lot of lacrosse players play those three sports, other sports as well.
Sure.
So, and I think a lot of it too, the same with the Midwest, comes from the parents' background, right? And I think that's where the Midwest struggles a little bit because the parents just don't have a lot of idea what the sport is.
Sure.
So going into that, it's there's a little fear, a little unknowing. And, as parents going into teaching their son or daughter the sport, want to know some background so they don't look like idiots. So with that piece on Long Island and in Maryland and in the Northeast, you have all these parents that have just a ton of knowledge. So they're putting, sticks in kids' hands by, I started in second grade. So it starts really young, where, my sisters still live on Long Island and, all my nieces and nephews have been playing, since they can walk.
For sure.
And it's just a big community piece too. We had the police activity league, which would be kind of considered like your youth leagues for Little League and things like that.
Okay.
And every town had one.
Sure.
So,
sure.
There was a great amount of community balance there and building throughout the years where we would get to know more other local cities in that area to develop that. And with that, the competitiveness obviously gets better and better and better. Where in the Midwest, just to give you a little contrast, is you just don't have, Wisconsin just stated like, as a sanctioned sport for high schools recently, like the last year or two.
Right.
And, it's been clubbed for such a long time. So hopefully that's a growth piece there that it's going to build. But I think it's still going to take a little more time for people just to be more, acclimated into what the sport, helps out and gives. And then the other issue is that the amount of like rule changes,
right.
You and I talked about it a lot, Greg.
Yes.
Continuous rule changes in the game, which can be, complicated for coaches and parents.
Yeah, especially when you're first getting into the sport, as I am learning right now. So let's talk about your playing career. You bounced around in college a couple different places, but you finished out your career at Stony Brook.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that experience, because in my research, you guys had the best season in school history, like got to the NCAA tournament. But then you also had like a losing season. Right. So that's kind of how my career was in football. We started off bad, turned the corner, got to the playoffs later on. But it's super valuable, I think, to have both sides of the coin. You know what it's like when it's bad, and you know what it's like when it is really good.
Right.
So talk to me about your experience at Stony Brook.
For one, it was a great experience. I looked at, because I came out of junior college, and we had won a national championship junior college.
Okay.
My whole starting unit was all Division I players, so we all went different places, and I wanted to stay a little more local, and also a place that was going to give me, the best scholarship opportunity. And then looking further into the team, it was a very veteran team when I went in there. So I knew that the expectations were high for that team that year. They had just built a new stadium for Lacrosse, which was another perk to wanting to be there. Going into the team, I felt like this was a really strong camaraderie group that had a lot of good leaders in the unit, and it really showed because we had a really tough schedule that year too. And through that whole progression of the season, I did notice that once this season was done, we were going to be dry for the next year because we graduated, I think, like 12 or 14 seniors after that season.
Right.
But the experience was incredible. Going to the tournament was an amazing opportunity, and we played Cornell in that first round, and played, I believe, at Brown University. So just to get to that level and get that experience was really cool. We beat Albany in the conference finals to get there. I think when we transitioned to the following year, there was a lot of question marks, and we did have a heavy schedule. I remember playing, Maryland, North Carolina, Navy was, elite. All those teams were elite. They were like top 5, top 10. So I think our coach kind of overscheduled, and that's probably why he wasn't there the next year about how things went. But the experience to play those teams, I think, was his goal. To develop a young team and get to that, that higher experience level for younger guys to be in that stage and understand how to play to that level.
So let's talk about MSLE lacrosse now. You've kind of been here since like the very beginning, if not almost the beginning, if not the very beginning. Talk to me about how far the MSLE lacrosse program has come from when you first got here to where it is now, and what's the next step for the program?
Right. So when I got here, they were 1-44.
Okay.
So they had one win out of their first 4 seasons, and I knew the program was in disarray. There was only 10 guys on the roster, 12 guys on the roster when I got here. So I didn't have time to recruit that season because I got there in the late summer. And then I brought on some hockey players. I got an assistant coach. So, the guys that we had were tough guys, guys previously that were there that wanted to have a winning season or some form of, a vision,
right.
a goal in place. And so I instilled that, and I instilled it through, having certain procedures that would make this team a professional team. And that was my whole point. Like, what are the standards of performance that are going to make this program reach the next level? And it has to start with these guys believing in the pride of the program and the institution. So like a lot of things that we instill was just having pride in yourselves and what we're doing. Like having the logo of the helmets being faced up and not on the ground, like little things like that really matter. You being a football player, details matter.
Yep.
In those pieces, and they go a long way. So that first year, it was about just believing in themselves and knowing that the program has taken a new turn. And then as I progressed into, my first year recruiting, I had a great recruiting class, 15 kids, and we flipped it around. You look at the record books. I think we went 8-9. Had a very strong season, and I knew that we were in a conference that was pretty established, and we had a long way to go. But the goal was always to try to enhance the roster to be compatible to have high level practices, because our sport is very similar to basketball in the sense that it's a lot of up and down. Lacrosse practices are great because they're a lot of fun in terms of like basketball style. I played football. Football practice is the worst, right? They're super boring, super technical.
Yep.
But you are managing a lot of things and people, and that's where I feel like lacrosse, basketball and football are relatable, because there's a lot of different areas in lacrosse that you have to be concerned with. And if you don't have the roster size, you really can't perform those practice pieces, to get your team better. So that was the early goal stages. And then as we progressed, it's about, hey, how do we get to, the conference tournament? How do we get to the conference final? And that goes back to bringing in, tough blue collar style guys, and really having a base of, being here 11 years, what type of recruits you're bringing in. Mm-hmm. So we've always been a very strong defensive unit as we progress through the years I've been here. And I think a lot of that is the mindset of some of these guys. You talk to other coaches around here, they always get good goalies. And I don't know what it is about engineering and goalies, but we always have had good goalies, and highly successful goalies. And that has been the starting point for our defense, and then getting really high level defensive players, where I think our biggest struggle recruiting wise has been some of the offensive pieces. And where that comes from, I don't know. I have a big, theoretical think that offense is very creative mindset, and then engineers, I feel, have that linear A to B. This is how we construct things. Sure. Where that's why defenses are great, because it's you're going on angles and things like that on the defensive side. Where offense, you got creative guys, so right brain, left brain kind of mindset. Sure. And I've come to like, hey, maybe I should write a thesis on this, because I really have some good, staple statements to back that up. And I still feel like that's kind of where we are. Like, we just never had the same balance of offense and defense. But my goal moving forward right now is, bringing in these classes that have that mutual balance of talent on the offensive end and the defensive end. And then putting these guys in the mindset of knowing that we are on the fringe of being that top tier team. And if you look at our past 5 years, other than last year, we've been in the conference semifinals, the top 3 to 4 teams in the conference. So it's now getting over that hump, and that's, as any program would tell you, is the biggest challenge. Right. Hitting that next piece into your standard of performance in your unit.
Yep, and becoming kind of the upper echelon, if you will, of the NAC. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching style. You mentioned the military background. I haven't been here that long. I've only been here since October. You seem really calm when I'm just walking through the office, so maybe there's a switch you flip on when you step on the the lacrosse field.
It's not a pitch.
It's not a pitch. But talk to me a little bit about your coaching style, your leadership style. Is some of that, military style, really strict? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely wouldn't show it in the office. But there is a switch, Greg, for sure. It's a hybrid though too. I've out of the military, I've taken a lot of the uniformity piece and kind of the group think of, hey, we're in this, path together. We're at one common goal as a team, right? There's no individual base in that. And that's very militaristic as well. Mm-hmm. So I did instill a lot of those things early on. Like, we would have our team split up in squads, so we would develop leadership styles within our team. So, each squad would have a squad leader based upon the numbers we had. And usually those were upperclassmen. And that helped me manage the team, not so much as a micromanage, but giving my players the opportunity to become leaders. Mm-hmm. So that was a big piece of me wanting to see our guys become leadership, pieces that were going to help them in their, their real world lifestyles as well. when I get out to the field, I try to give the guys a mindset of, okay, this should be the best part of your day, but it's also going to be the hardest 2 hours of work and effort that you put in. So, am I intense in practice? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running up and down the field, and I'm trying to get the guys to be at the same energy level that I'm at. We have our acronym this year. We call it EAT. It's energy. It's effort, attitude, and toughness. Keeping it as simple as that. Be like, if you can bring the effort and the attitude at the highest levels, and then that's all I can ask out of those guys, and then they'll get better through and through each and every day. But I do bring that intense level of saying, like, hey, if the game of lacrosse, as you'll find out in watching a game this Saturday, Greg, is it's high paced, it's very intense, and if you don't bring that type of intensity to the practice field, then you're never going to be as prepared as you should be, and kind of get woken up, and not be ready for that setting.
For sure. Let's get into the nitty gritty of this team now. You guys graduated your top 3 point scorers from last season. Talk to me a little bit about going through this off season and kind of figuring out, the next offensive identity of this team. You talked about having a strong defense, but what's in the works on offense?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So I brought in 13 freshmen, and a lot of them are offensive players. So that's what I needed to replace the players from last year. I believe the offensive identity that we're going to have is more about sustaining long possessions, really controlling the ball, getting high quality shots through ball movement, and maybe even so much to simplify things for our guys not to overthink. So we're more of a building piece on that offensive end, and having the guys be as comfortable as they can out there and not have them to overthink. So I believe we're in the the good transition piece right now with where we are, because we are playing a lot of younger guys. But we do have other players that are stepping into some leadership roles on offense that didn't see a lot of offensive opportunities last year, because we did have a senior midfield line,
right?
And those guys were running probably 80% of the reps. So where our leadership is really going to be placed in there, and I know we're probably going to lead into it, is Peter and Soren, and even Dawson is the other attackman, is a sophomore who started last year quite a bit in some games. So I believe those guys are going to have to be the facilitators of the quarterbacks per se of the offense, and knowing being that field general out there, when to slow things down as well, when to speed things up. Because again, like basketball, lacrosse is transition, and you have multiple goal scoring opportunities in that situation. But with a young team, do we risk those opportunities by pushing, or do we want to settle things down and get our team in a cool and clear mindset going into that 80 seconds of offense?
Right. And, it kind of helps also being a spring sport that all these young guys, you have months to kind of get to know your teammates, build in those off-season practices. Whereas when you're a football player showing up, hey, 2 weeks to the first game, let's see what you guys are made of.
Right.
So
that's wild. Yeah.
That's a luxury for you spring sports. You mentioned a couple of your guys, Soren Savard and Peter Ruschenberg.
Yes.
Wow. Shout out to the MSL. Love mentioning guys from Illinois. They're your top returning scorers from last year. What do those guys specifically bring to the squad?
They're both very, very big players in terms of their stature. Peter's 6'3", he's 215. He actually cut back some weight to enhance his speed, which he has. He's turned his corner as wanting to be that next level player. I think he has a lot of potential to be one of the leading scorers in the conference. Great vision, great hands, knows the game really well. And then Soren is one of those just ferocious dodgers, uphill dodgers. I don't think anybody in our conference really can guard him, and stop, when he's on his path and his line to the cage. He also has a lot of other great qualities in his game of vision, and understanding when to, take the ball and control and take those opportunities to give us a goal or two at a time.
For sure. And now bouncing over to your defensive side, you talked about how that's always kind of been the identity of this team, having a strong defensive unit. Carson Harris and Griffin Kaiser led the team and caused turnovers last year, both coming back this year. Does that kind of change your philosophy? I'm assuming we talked about it briefly there, that the veterans on the defensive end can kind of alleviate some of the pressure on those offensive players.
Yeah, I would say, they are high level players, and to alleviate the pressure, I think it's more going to be on how we can get the ball back quickly on the offensive end and control the offensive side and possess. Where the defense brings, and Carson and Griffin have been phenomenal since they've been freshmen, is the intensity that they bring. Like that's a great piece that you can always pull back, but it's hard to like have a guy be intense all the time, and aggressive, which you want. So they now at this point, like right now, we've already had a scrimmage. I've been really impressed with what Carson and Griffin have done, and having Miles as a fifth-year goalie in there in the cage has been phenomenal in terms of communication. These guys, when we talked about what we're asking them to do, they're like, yeah, we got it, we know it, and how that is when having communication with someone that they look into your eyes like they know exactly what you're looking for. So our identity on our defensive side is really the physicality piece, and bringing intensity and pressure to those offensive units. But also on the other tail end is the fact that these guys are great stick handlers. And we did pick up a couple other players and transition some guys in positions on defense that I think are really going to make us get opportunities and early scoring chances. And I just want to name a couple guys, with Brandon Willingbrink coming down to close defense when he was in LSM last year. I think is a huge addition to our defense. And I feel like those guys are clicking on a high level already early in the season. We have Ethan Hazelwood, who's going to be an LSM, who transferred out of IWU, Illinois Wesleyan, to MSOE, and he's already made an impact, along with Andrew Reed as being our two LSM guys. And then our D middies have been great. Aiden Regan and Brandon Guzlecki have been phenomenal defensive middies, and they just keep getting better. And they're showing, again, their skill level early in the season. So if we're healthy, our goal as a team is if we can keep teams under 10, will give us a really good opportunity to win most of our games this year.
We'll get back into the nitty gritty here, but Coach, I got to break it up. We got to hit everyone's favorite segment, Raider Rapid Fire. I'm just going to blow these off to you, and you're, off the cuff.
Off the cuff. Here we go.
You walk into a stadium getting ready to play lacrosse. What's the worst song that could be playing?
Probably Sandstorm. I'm just tired of hearing
Okay.
that song, man. Yeah, right. Is that a knock on Wisconsin? Is that what they play?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the people usually give like a boring, like some people don't like AC/DC. A lot of people really don't complain that much, but I like that you don't care. I like that you don't care. What's your dream car?
Dream car
Could be like a fake car from a TV show or something, or it could be a real car.
Well, I'm a big surfer. It's hard to surf in this area here, obviously, but I did have a 1989 Jeep in high school, which was phenomenal. So if I could upgrade and get, a nice Jeep Wrangler,
okay.
I'd be pretty pumped.
What color?
Ooh, I'd have to go with probably a dark green.
Dark green.
With a tan interior.
Classy. I like it.
Military style there, right?
Favorite cartoon?
So my kids and I used to watch. My son was like 5 or 7. We used to watch Gravity Falls, which is an awesome cartoon.
Okay, I've heard of that, but I'm not super familiar.
It's like off of Disney. It's a really, really cool. It's only 2 seasons, but they have like 20 episodes per season, and really entertaining, and we loved it. So
I'll have to check that out.
Gravity Falls.
Favorite place to eat? I'm gonna add a caveat to this. Favorite place to eat in Milwaukee?
Oof, because I had a favorite place to eat, and it was definitely going to be on Long Island.
Okay, well, no, I want to hear that now. I want to hear that.
You want to hear that one? I'll have to say Sequa Deli, which is one of the things I wish we could change here in Wisconsin is have more delis. Because growing up, we had the Sequa Deli, and in the morning everybody would get breakfast sandwiches before school, and they had all these great selections. We'd always get the Hungry Man that had potatoes, bacon, ham, egg, cheese, incredible, just out of this world. And so I would say here in Milwaukee, I do like the public market, and I like the fish market. Their oysters are phenomenal.
Yeah, I've only gotten out to the public market once, but there's so much stuff.
And there's so much stuff.
I gotta try that.
The fish market was absolutely fire. It was very, very good.
That's good to know. What was your gear brand growing up, or even right now? If you're getting lacrosse stuff, what's the brand?
I'd say Champion.
Okay.
I grew up with Champion in high school and college. They just have thicker, more durable stuff, stuff and gear. And I'm always trying to find the champion gear for our guys. It's usually astronomically expensive, or they don't have the style I'm looking for. But you probably remember, back in like the early 2000s, like that heavy duty durable sweats.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Always like heather gray.
Heather gray. That's right.
Ply.
That's what I look for every year. Is the heather gray.
That's the good stuff.
That's classic.
Favorite athlete, growing up or right now?
I'd say John Starks. I'm a huge Knicks fan.
Okay.
And that's when the NBA was fun to watch. And just the physicality of the game, and John Starks, stuffing Michael Jordan, and that posterize is like classic New York fan based. But like he was so much fun to watch, and too bad the Knicks could never finish it out because of Jordan. But
that's tough.
Those games are
great 30 for 30 about the Pacers-Knicks rivalry back in the late 90s. Really good one.
Indeed.
I know you're a coach now, so you might not necessarily be getting amped before a game, but what's the pregame song choice?
Pregame song choice. I usually change. I'm a big EDM guy. So I do like a good bass, a good beat going. Recently, it's been the Joker and the something I forget. I can't remember the song, but the guys have been playing a lot.
The Joker and the Thief.
The Joker and the
Mother.
Thief. The Wolf Mother has been a favorite. I always put up Bone Thugs and Biggie.
Notorious Thugs.
Notorious. That's what I. That's my
dangerous.
Favorite. That's my favorite.
That's dangerous.
That's what I have all the guys listen to before we walk out.
I found that song. I think it was like my sophomore year of college. I came across that and I was like, at practice. I'm
getting chills just thinking about it because I can't wait to put it on. I mean that gets me going.
Yeah, that for sure. It's provocative.
Oh yeah, great beat.
And then the most important question: you're going to the movies. I need the full order. I need a snack. I need a candy, and I need a drink.
Okay. Snack. I guess I'm going traditional because I'm not a big candy guy. I'm just gonna go popcorn.
Okay.
Clean. And maybe extra butter on that.
Okay. Clean. On second thought.
A little butter. A little more butter, please. Soda. I'm not a big soda fan, but if I was gonna pick a soda, I'd probably go Coke Classic.
Okay.
On that, but usually just get a water. If I'm doing a candy, it's Twizzlers.
Okay.
Twizzlers.
A lot of people give you flack. I got no problem with Twizzlers. I love Twizzlers.
Yeah, Twizzlers are great. Yeah. Just like the traditional one, not the ones with that.
Not the pull apart.
Just
red.
The traditional red. Yeah. I definitely need to pick a movie, but I was going to say Caddyshack. That's like my favorite movie of all time.
That's fitting for. I feel like there's a whole generation where it's just without even thinking about it, Caddyshack.
Oh yeah.
And then it became Step Brothers.
That's true for the next generation. Yep.
All right, let's get back into the nitty gritty here. You mentioned him briefly before we took the little break. Thomas Miles returning as a fifth-year goalie. You talked a little bit about how you always seem to have a great goalie. What's his presence like in that?
His presence is unwavering. Very upbeat, positive. Always got a smile on his face. When he makes a mistake, he's the first to say that he made the mistake. He's not going to blame the defense, which is what you want out of a true goalie. And this year, he's been very, very vocal. So I do and do not like that because if he can handle it, I say go ahead. But, we always just tell our goalies to focus on stopping the ball. And trying to do multitasking is hard enough.
Sure.
And trying to stop a ball that's going close to 100 miles an hour, let's say, it's going to be pretty tough. So, having him do that this year has been really good, especially with the veteran defense. I think they're all in sync with that. So Thomas brings, all those pieces. And again, he's a great ball stopper, and then he's the kind of guy that once he's clicking, he's clicking because he's hooting and hollering and talking smack around everybody, chirping it up.
That's awesome. Love hearing that. Tell me a little bit, what does a typical lacrosse practice look like? I come from football where it's, some independent work, then a lot of whole team work, and then that's kind of the whole deal. Just walking through the building, I see a lot of guys just play catch with themselves in the stairwell.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's punishment. I don't know why you make them do that or if that's on their own decision. But talk to me about what a typical lacrosse practice would look like.
Sure. The wall ball thing that I can add into, we've always instilled that, but I've made it more of a staple and a non-negotiable piece to our team.
Okay.
One, because what I put in is a plan that these guys have to do wall ball 5 days a week, but they do have a test out every Monday. So if they pass the test out, then they only have to do it 3 days a week.
Okay.
And the test out only takes 2 minutes. It just shows like how quickly you can do it, the amount of reps, and not make any mistakes. The goal is though, I tell them like I'm only asking 15 minutes, and that's 1% of your day, right? So you can't give 1% of your day. These guys are gonna laugh when they hear this. Then why should you be playing the sport at this level, right? And the same thing goes for like basketball, shooting, going out there putting reps in. Now, how does that transverse over to practice plans? And my practice, 2-hour plan is up tempo. One of the things that I'm always a stickler about is uniformity coming out there. Everybody wearing the same thing. If they're not wearing the same thing, then they're going back in and changing. Because we're all there as one unit to improve as one unit. So that's a staple right away. I kind of like my guys to be kind of loose and comfortable. So I say to them, your first, part of practice is your stretch. So that's when you guys can goof around and I'll talk with them and we're kind of, conversing. And then after that, we're bringing in, we're going to work. And it's very up tempo and very structured. So I typically, most practices when we're not really getting before game time, it's going to be 10-minute increments. And there's a style from full field passing into, full field drills of practicing on writing and clearing, then going into positional stuff like you were saying, because you can break down the offense, defense, the goalie, the face-off guys. So there's all different positional pieces that we'll break into for like 10 to 20 minutes, and then back into team setting stuff, whether it's uneven stuff or one-on-ones or even, and then usually finish up with team-based training, and then call it a day.
Nice. So this is a random sidebar, but you got your bachelor's in European history. Talk to me about that. Are you studying?
Might as well be like Sanskrit, right?
Yeah. Are you studying like the ancient Italian lacrosse arts? I mean, where does that come from, and how does that tie into that?
I can honestly say like my plan was to become like a teacher and coach class in high school, or maybe build up from there. But I was studying Russian pedagogy in the 1900s. That's what my thesis was on. The driest stuff you would ever imagine. Just talking about it is making me kind of tired. I did focus a lot of what I was studying before that piece. My thesis was European history of World War II, which I have a big passion for and still read about. And so, those pieces and history is so important anyway to our background and what we do and our knowledge, where I feel like the more people have knowledge in the background of what we came from, really paves what their future holds for us down the road. So I feel like having people know that and then me teaching that was where I wanted to go with that path.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here.
So before I cut you loose, Coach, what else is on the horizon for Raiders lacrosse, and how can people help support? You got your first game coming up on the 17th against DePaul, but what else you got going on?
So what's nice about our schedule this year is the first 4 games we're having on Saturdays only. So very much like a Division I kind of schedule where you have a week to prepare, which I feel is going to be essential for having a young unit and preparing them through the week through film and development. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about our overall schedule, and that we're going to be tested early. We don't really have many, I would say, easy games in that regards, which I think will prepare us well going into conference play. So with the weather being how it is this year, it's been phenomenal. Typically we're still
inside. It was scary for a little bit.
I know.
Then man, it disappeared real quick.
It did. I think we're going to be we're going to be good to go on Saturday. Yeah. So in that regards to the scheduling setup, we're going to be in a good spot getting into conference play. I'm excited for it.
And I'm excited to see it firsthand as well. Thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks, Coach. We're good. Fun.
Thank you to Coach Farrell for joining us, and thank you for listening. You can follow Raider Athletics on YouTube at MSOE Raider Athletics, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MSOE_Raiders. Don't forget to find us on Spotify too. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, repost, share, and get the word out to all your Raider friends and family. We want you to be heard. Mention us on social media and tell us what you want to hear about. Go Raiders!